Hey everybody, and welcome back to Circuits and Sprockets. Today I'm working on this TCL 55-inch 4K TV with a Roku built in. And I actually found this TV on the curb on trash night. And usually when I find a TV in that way, it means the screen is cracked, which is something that at least I'm unable to repair. But as a rule of thumb, if the TV on the curb has its power cord with it, and especially if it has its remote with it, I've kind of found that that usually means the screen's not cracked. It means that it's being thrown out for some other reason. The TV's failed for some other reason. The picture doesn't work, there's a big dark spot, or the sound doesn't work, or something like that, that actually is repairable, and it's not a cracked screen. Now that obviously isn't always the case, but it's something that's worked out for me. Anyway, this one had the power cord with it, and so I brought it home and kind of hoping for the best. So I plugged it in and turned it on. Actually, I'll just turn it on right now. I've just got this universal remote programmed for it right now. And when I turn it on, let me kill my light here. When I turn it on, you can see the backlights come on, but that's about it. Now just that does tell us a few things, right? So you can see right away the screen's not cracked, or at least it's not cracked significantly. It tells us that the power supply is working, at least in part, right? So it's able to power up the main board, which I'll get to in a minute. But it's able to power up the main board. It's able to power up the LEDs. If I press the volume buttons, you can hear it getting its volume turned up and down. So it's able to power the speakers. It's able to power, the logic that controls those speakers. And so we can be reasonably sure that the power supply is working, or at least mostly working. The other thing it tells us is that the LED backlights are working, at least for the most part, right? So I can't tell with everything connected, I can't tell down to the individual LED whether or not each one is working, but there's no like sweeping dark spots, right? So it looks like a pretty even backlight, and nothing crazy is clearly off. So right off the bat, we're in pretty good shape, right? We're pretty confident that this is at least going to be repairable. And so I'll start digging into the back of this thing and see if I can start troubleshooting a little bit further. These TVs, at least from a hardware count perspective, aren't super complicated, and you'll see that when I open up the back, right? Usually on these TVs, there's a power supply board that kind of controls all the different voltages that the TV needs to operate. There's what's called a main board, which is basically the motherboard for the TV, and it controls all of the logic and all the inputs, the HDMI and the outputs, the speakers and things like that. Kind of controls it's the brains of the TV. And then there's something called the TCON board, which is short for timing and control. And that is actually the board that is responsible for displaying the picture, or at least telling the TV what picture to display. And so, I'm relatively confident the power supply is working. I'm relatively confident the main board is working, although, I'm not certain about that. And just the fact that we have kind of all of the lights working, but no picture, I'm going to be focusing in on the TCON board. But before I get too ahead of myself, let's open up the back of this thing and see what it looks like. All right, so it looks like there's even fewer boards than I thought there were going to be. It looks like there's just two. We have the power supply board, and this is all off. I've got it unplugged, or else I wouldn't be touching any of this. But we've got the power supply board here. It's where the power cord plugs into right here. And this handles all the power filtering, all the transforming, and it gives all the voltages necessary over here to the main board. And this green one is the main board here. Like I mentioned, it's kind of like the motherboard for the TV, and it handles, well, basically everything else. It looks like on this TV, the TCON function that I mentioned it looks like it's built into the main board here. There's no separate TCON board in this TV. And these two ribbon cables here are what I would kind of think of as the output of the TCON board. You can see they travel down here to these kind of circuit board strips at the bottom. And these guys at the bottom are actually hardwired into the LCD panel on the front. And this is what actually tells the LCD what to display. And so I guess the TCON function is just built into the main board. So there's only two boards here. So like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure the power supply board is working fine. I'm pretty sure most of the main board is working fine. I'm going to focus here in the TCON function because I think the hardware for the TV is working okay, but for some reason it's just not displaying a picture. And so I'm going to start looking into specifically these connectors here. And there's two outputs that go to the LCD panels. One of them controls the one half of the TV, and the other one controls the other half. So the first thing I'm going to do is disconnect one of these and just leave it disconnected, and then I'll power on the TV and see if we get any change to the picture. If there is a problem with one of these, we'll end up seeing like half of the picture on the TV be okay, and then the other half be off, depending on which one we unplug. But I'll start there, and then I'll start disconnecting these, and then we'll fire up the TV and see what's going on. All right, so I've got the entire right side LCD disconnected from that TCON function. And so I'm going to turn the TV on now, and what we should see, if that area is the problem, then the left side of the TV should work fine. And then the right side of the TV should be black because it's not receiving any signal at all. If that's not the problem area, then we'll probably just see the same thing that we saw when everything was connected. So I'm going to use my remote here. We'll fire up the TV. Okay, and sure enough, let me kill my light so we can see what's going on. So the left side of the TV looks totally normal, right? And I think it, yeah, functions normal. You might be able to hear it clicking. And the right side of the TV is, of course, off, right? Because it's disconnected. So that is a good sign, right? Um, it seems like there's some issue with the right side, either TCON board or LCD or something. So what I'm going to do now is swap those cables in the back. I'm going to reconnect the right side and disconnect the left side and just see, I'm assuming we'll see something weird, right? I don't think we'll see the right side working and the left side not working, because now I think there is a problem with the right side. But let's swap those cables and we'll turn the TV back on and see what it looks like. All right, so you just saw me swap those TCON cables. And so now, let's see, the left side LCD is disconnected and the right side is connected. And that right side, right, is now where we think there may be a problem. And so now the only side that's connected is the one where we're thinking there's a problem. So I'm not sure what we're going to see here, but we'll try it out. I'm going to turn my light off and then we'll turn this on. Okay, and we're seeing the same thing that we were seeing at the beginning when everything was connected, right? So it looks like the LEDs are all working fine, but there's no picture on either side. So yeah, maybe that's what I would expect, right? I wouldn't expect anything on the left side, and of course there's not. We're probably even more sure that there's some problem with the right side. Okay, so now if we're thinking there's a problem with the right side LCD, maybe let's take a little bit of a deeper look into that main board, into that TCON area of that main board, specifically around that right side cable. And let's just see what we can find, if there's any markings or anything to help us decipher exactly what that cable is connecting. So let's get this thing turned around and see what we can find out. So we're back here at the TCON functional area of the main board. And I've just got the two cables disconnected and just kind of tucked under the board here so I can see what we're looking at. And so we're really focused on this connector right here. This is the TCON cable for the right half LCD. Obviously, you know, it's on the left side, but we're looking at the back of the TV, so everything's flipped around. But so we're looking at this connector right here. And so I think, you know, one of these many pins here has is bad, or has a bad signal coming or going to it. And when I say bad, right, I mean this is just a cable. So when I say bad, I mean it connects right down here to this LCD driver board. And this driver board is kind of hard to service, right? It goes all the way along the length of the LCD panel. But I think there's something wrong on this board that connects to this cable that comes back up to this TCON board. And so rather than try to service that LCD driver, you can just use like regular Scotch tape or
or something to block the signals on these TCON cables. And so my hope is that just one of those pins has something wrong with it, or the signal to one of those pins has something wrong with it, and we'll figure out which one it is and block it, and just kind of get around the problem that way. Now the problem is I need to figure out which one of these pins it is, and yeah, I'm not really sure how to find that out. Really, with these TCON cables, there's two main types of signals, right there, and I'm not an expert on this, but there are many people on YouTube who have explained it very well. And in fact, I'll link to a particularly helpful video by Frugal Repair. But there's basically vertical signals and horizontal signals, and the vertical signals are what dictate the actual data that's displayed by the LCD. So that's the actual picture data, and then the horizontal signals are timing signals. And those timing signals are shared between the left LCD and the right LCD. And what I mean by that is the same timing signal is fired to both LCDs at the same time. And so I don't see any labels here on the main board, but what I do see are these traces right here. These little lines are copper traces, and that's how basically this entire board conducts electricity. But I see these traces that are going directly from this connector on the on the left for the right LCD, and just go right along here and connect to the mirrored area on this connector for the left LCD. And so I'm thinking that's where those timing signals are. And I think what I'm going to do is block the signals that are connected to these few lines. Looks like maybe 10 or 12 lines or so. I'll I'll block all of those and see if we get some sort of picture across the whole screen. And if we do, I'm expecting it to be pretty poor because all of those timing signals will be blocked. But from there, I can kind of um, systematically remove the tape from one timing signal at a time until we get kind of a clean picture. If there's something wrong with just one of those timing signals, and we're able to block just that one, we should be able to get a a very clear picture. It should be basically not noticeable when watching the TV. But I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself, so um, I'm actually going to pull this whole main board out just to see if there's any markings or anything that I'm missing that might make this process a little bit easier or give me a little bit more confidence that I'm doing the right thing. And then I'll also need to pull these cables out as well, or actually just this one to get the tape on there and start blocking signals. So I'm going to get those two things pulled out. We'll take it over to the workbench, and we'll start seeing if we can block some of those signals.
All right, so I've got the main board over on my workbench, and I just finished mapping out the pins that are shorted between these two connectors. And so what do I mean by that? I've got my multimeter set to continuity, and so when I touch these two probes together, you should hear a beep, right? And you do. And so what that means is if I touch any two parts on this board and they are connected together, then we'll hear the beep from the multimeter. And so what I did was start at pin 1 on this connector and pin 60 on this connector. There's 60 pins across each of these. And just went through systematically and figured out which pins are shorted together. Like I mentioned, right, what I'm after are those timing signals, and they should be shorted between the two sides, between the two LCDs. And so on some of these, right, some of these are shorted together. Pin 1, pin 2, and of course, some of them are not. So if I go down to this other end, we got 59 and 2 are mirrored, but they're not shorted together. So I went through all 60 pins and just put together a very simple spreadsheet to keep track of which ones are shorted, which ones are not, and some of them are ground. And so I just worked through, like I said, I went ahead and did the entire connector just for sake of completion. And sure enough, kind of in this area of this connector, we've got a bunch. We've got 14 pins here in a row that are shorted together. And so I'm pretty sure that the timing signals are either all of these or some subset of these. I will say on the board here, you've got these two thicker traces that are kind of off on their own, and I'm relatively sure that those are power of some sort. And so I'm going to assume that those are pins 1 and 2 on the connector, and so I'm going to ignore those for the sake of doing the taping here. And so what I'm going to focus on are pins 3 through 14, and I'm like I said, I'm relatively sure those are the 12 timing signals. And so this is where I'm going to these are the pins I'm going to tape off on this cable that connects the main board to the TCON, or I'm sorry, the main board to that LCD driver board. And so I'll skip these first two pins, and then I'll cut a piece of tape kind of exactly the length of pins 3 through 14. Now, those pins are pretty small, right? So I do have kind of a cheap little microscope that hooks up to my computer. So I'm going to use that to make sure that I cut the tape to the exact length that I need. So let me get that set up, and I'll bring you guys back in a second. All right, so I've got my little microscope set up here. I'm just going to rip off a small piece of regular Scotch tape. And like I said, I'm after pins, let's see, 3 through 14 here. So I'm going to try to get this lined up right with pin 3. That's looking pretty good. Oh. And then I'll count up to pin 14. So I'm looking at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I'll try to cut this right between pins 14 and 15. I'll just got a pair of tweezers here to try to lift this part off. All right, and that's looking pretty good. So I'll bring this up and just kind of wrap this piece around the back. This doesn't really matter. All right, so now I've got these pins 3 through 14 blocked off, and like I said, I'm pretty sure those are the timing pins. So we'll get this back in the TV. We'll get the main board reinstalled. We'll get this cable reinstalled. We'll fire it up and see what happens. Okay, so I've got the main board back in, I've got that cable back in with all those timing signals blocked off. So let's turn this guy on and see what it looks like now. Whoa. Okay. Well, that looks much better than I was expecting. So we do have a full picture across both LCDs now. But, okay, so the longer I look at it, the right side LCD, the color is not quite right. So the left side looks good. You've got that kind of red background you would expect to see on one of these TCL Roku TVs, but the right side is kind of gray-ish. It's not entirely grayed out, but you see like the Netflix logo should be like really red, right? The YouTube TV logo, just not looking quite right. So I'm not sure if that's related to blocking those timing signals or not, but we'll keep moving and see if that gets a little bit better. Okay, so another thing I'm noticing here is at the top of the screen, there are some lines, and I would expect to see that since we're blocking all those timing signals. There should be some lines that aren't getting the signal that they need. All right, so I think all that's okay. We'll see kind of what shakes out as we continue working here. So what I'm going to do now is take that cable back to the workbench and just cut that tape off of one timing signal at a time. And what I would expect to see is for the picture to get just a little bit better as another pin is revealed, I guess I'll say. And then when we get to whichever pin is bad, for the picture to suddenly get much worse, or maybe even do the blank screen like we were seeing before. So I'm going to start working my way through. I'll remove the tape from pin 3 and then keep moving through. Well, I probably won't get to pin 14, but we'll see at what point the picture starts getting worse. All right, so interestingly, now the color is kind of blinking between the grayed out color that we were seeing before and what I would consider a normal color. So we'll keep going. Okay, so the color, I've trimmed away two additional, I've trimmed away the tape from two additional pins. Um, Pins 3 and 4 now are uncovered, and the color is looking much better. Um, the Netflix logo looks normal. The YouTube TV logo looks normal, so that's good. Um, the lines at the top of the screen are just about gone, if not gone. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. I'm going to keep trimming that tape back, and we'll keep going. I guess, you could ask, why not just stop here? It looks like everything's working fine. But my goal really is to have the absolute minimum number of signals blocked as possible. I just want this thing to be in as good of shape as it can be. So I'm going to keep going until I see the picture, like I said, until I see that picture get much worse, which means we'll have uncovered the pin with the problem, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I just uncovered pin 5, and the picture did get worse. So you can see the color, the kind of like color flashing on the left, well, on the right side of the TV, it's upside down, is back. And we've got like a rolling color thing going on over here, really across the whole screen. So pin 5 might have been our issue. I think what I'll do is go ahead and block pin 5 again and uncover everything else and see if we get a good picture. And if so, then we know pin 5 is our problem, and we'll basically button everything up. But if we still get some kind of issue, then we know that another pin has a problem as well. So I'm relatively confident pin 5 has a problem. What I don't know is if any of the other pins also have a problem. So I'm gonna go back to the workbench, cover up pin 5, uncover everything else, and see what we get. All right, so it looks like we're back to where we started, which means one of the pins that I uncovered also has a problem, or maybe even have been the main source of the problem. So I'm gonna put the tape back on those remaining pins, and we'll keep kind of systematically removing them one by one. All right, so I'm gonna leave that tape on pin 5 because I'm still relatively sure that one has an issue. I'm going to add a new piece of tape from I'm going to from pin 7 to 14. So I'm not doing 6 because 6 will be the next one that we test. All right, so we have the picture back, which is good. But that means one of those pins that we recovered also has a problem. So I'm just going to keep moving along. Okay, so I just uncovered pin 10 and we are back to the black screen. So I'm certain that pin 10 has a problem. So I'm gonna keep, let's see, I'm gonna try the same thing I did on pin 5, right? So I'll keep, I'm gonna re-tape pin 10 and then I'll uncover everything else. And we'll see if that problem's solved. Okay, so now you can see pin 5 and pin 10 are covered and everything else is uncovered. So I just want to make sure I'm counted correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll get this installed and see if our problem is solved. Wow, okay, so we're still having the same blank screen problem, even with those known bad pins blocked. So that's all right. We'll keep, I think we've got about 4 signals left to check, so we'll just keep working through them. Okay. Looks like pin 11 may also be problematic. Okay. Well, I'll recover pin 11 and move on. All right, so we're still getting that blank screen issue. So right now, pins 5, 10, and 11 are covered, and everything else is uncovered. So we still haven't tested 12, 13, and 14, and so I'll move forward with those 3. All right, and we're back to that blank screen. So it looks like 14 was also a problem. So I'm going to go back to the bench and make sure that pins 5, 10, 11, and 14 are all blocked off. And then we'll come back and do a final test. Okay, finally, I think we have all of the problematic pins blocked off. So I worked through all of those timing signals and ended up being 4 of those signals were causing different problems. But now that those are blocked off, the screen looks great. The color is normal. It looks normal on the menu screen here. None of those lines we saw earlier are present as far as I can tell. And so I think we're in pretty good shape. Now, this is only the menu screen, and so I'm gonna, before I get it all buttoned up, I'm gonna get it flipped back over and connected to the internet so I can actually pull something up and make sure that the picture is good when we're actually watching TV. So I'm gonna get all that set up, and then we'll bring you back for the real final test. All right, so I've got the TV hooked up to my Wi-Fi here, and just pulled up like a 4K test video on YouTube of just like some stock imagery, I guess. Just wanted to test out, what the image looks like when you're watching something real. And man, it looks great. I mean, there's no difference in color between the two sides, between the two LCDs. And any of that line, any of those flashing lines or anything that we saw are totally gone. And yeah, so this thing is looking really nice. So I am going to get the back all buttoned up. So the back's still open. I'm gonna get that cable, permanently reinstalled. I'm gonna get the back cover on. And then I'm just gonna kind of give it a general cleaning. I put some pretty good smudges on the screen just from handling it so much. So I'm gonna get all that done. All right, so I think that's a wrap on this one. Man, this thing went from being thrown out on trash night to a working 4K TV with just a few small slivers of tape. I'm just thrilled with the way this thing turned out. I mean, keeping it out of a landfill, and then, of course, we've got a nice 55-inch TV that somebody will definitely be able to put to use. This was a fun one. It was definitely a little bit tedious working through all those individual pins, but it's just so satisfying to see this thing working so well after putting that work into it. So if you liked the video or if you learned anything, please consider leaving a like. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, I'm doing a bunch of repair videos on all kinds of different things. So if you're interested in content like that, please consider subscribing. I know this was a particularly long one, so I really appreciate you watching. and we'll see you in the next one.